channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Saturday, and for today's video, I grabbed a couple items out of my stash and gave them pretty neutral makeovers for Christmas. I absolutely love how both of them came out. I can't wait to show them to you. And without further ado, let's get to today's projects. My first project is this ceramic kind of obelisk thing that I picked up on my most recent junk run. I didn't really care for the color, and I knew I wanted to use this in one of my Christmas displays. So I am starting by giving it a base coat of this Heirloom White by Rustoleum. I like to give my ceramic pieces that are really slick a nice base coat of spray paint for a couple reasons. First of all, it really gives the paint something to adhere to. And second of all, when you wax or do any distressing, you're going to end up going back into whatever your base color is sometimes. And I didn't want any of that ugly brown showing through. Once my spray paint was dry, I went over it with 2 coats of DIY's Crinoline, and rather than painting it on, I am pouncing or stippling my paint on just to give it a little bit of texture and avoid any brush stroke marks. So I am just kind of pouncing everywhere, and I did go over this with 2 coats. The first coat gave me super good coverage, but it's hard to see where you missed. And when I looked at it very closely after the first coat, there were a couple shiny spots that were still showing through. So I did go over it with that second coat of paint. Now, to make this look a little more Christmassy, I wanted to add some gold. So I grabbed out Golden Ticket by DIY. It's a beautiful gold patina. So it is a top coat, and I am dry brushing some of that Golden Ticket over the details on this piece. And what I mean by dry brushing is I dip the tips of my bristles in the Golden Ticket, and then I wipe almost all of that back off onto a shop towel, so that I'm left with very little of the gold on my brush. Then I just go over all of the details with kind of a feather light touch, just sweeping back and forth over the details, and I did get some over the bulk of the piece as well, and that's fine. And I just kept adding it until I was happy with how it looked. Now, since I didn't completely cover the crinoline with the gold patina, I did need to still seal my crinoline paint. So for that, I'm using DIY's clear wax. So I simply adding that clear wax with my soft bristle brush, rubbing it down into all of the details on this piece until I have a nice coat of wax all over. And then I'm grabbing a dry shop towel and then just gently wiping back the excess. Now, I could have stopped here, but I wanted to add a little bit more gold to this. So I grabbed out my Eternal Decor wax by Redesign with Prima, and I dabbed a little onto my shop towel. And then using a little detail brush, I just went around a couple of the details on this piece and brushed on some of that decor wax. Now, to be quite honest, in hindsight, I probably would not have added the decor wax. I think it still turned out really cute, but I think the decor wax might have been a little too much. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. My second project is this treasure chest. Now, if you watched my last thrift haul, you saw that I picked up a smaller version of this. And really, I had thought I was going to get both of them done in time for today's video. However, this one ended up being twice as much work as I thought it was going to be. So the second little one will have to go in a future video. At any rate, this one's been sitting on my shelf for some time, mainly because that bottom was so wimpy and wobbly, and I knew I needed to replace it. Now, luckily, I just happened to have some scrap wood that would work, so my husband cut me out a piece, and then all I needed to do was just sand the edges to get them all nice and smooth. Now, obviously, this light wood wasn't going to match very well with the dark inside of my chest, so I went ahead and grabbed out my dark and decrepit liquid patina by DIY. You can see here it's a bit like a stain, and I am definitely going to need another coat of it over that really light wood. Then I decided to give my chest a little bit of a bath before I went any further. It was pretty dusty from being in my stash for a while. Now the inside of it was in pretty okay shape, and I wanted to keep that dark brown color, but there were a couple of spots that were kind of faded, and so I decided to go over the inside with a coat of dark and decrepit as well. This really helped clean it up and just even out the entire inside of the box. So I'm just putting one good coat and letting it air dry, just like I would a paint. Then it was on to removing my hardware, so I'm just removing the hinges from the back and the little latch on the front. Then I went ahead and gave my bottom a second coat of the dark and decrepit, and you can see what a huge difference that second coat made. Once the bottom was dry, I decided to glue it in rather than staple or nail it. So I'm just using my Gorilla wood glue and running a little bead of that around the edge and then smoothing it over with my finger and then laying that bottom in there and pressing it down nice and tight so that it's adhered well to the glue. Now, when I took this all apart so that we could get the bottom out, I had to remove this little strip of wood. So here I am just hammering back those little bitty nails that are in it so that I can reuse them to reattach this little strip. So I just figured out where it needed to be and then used those same nails and hammered those back in. Once I finally had all of my prep work done, it was time to give this thing a coat of paint. So I grabbed my Crinoline by DIY and I started painting, and I noticed almost immediately that I was having a ton of bleed through to the point where my paint was turning orange. Now, I didn't want to have to spray this whole thing down with shellac. I really didn't want that over the leather on the straps. So I decided instead to go over it with a couple coats of Salvation Solution by DIY. This is their clear. It's a fantastic product. You can see I had a little bit of resist at first, but when I put the second coat on, it went over really smooth. Now, as you can imagine, I really had no intention of having to paint this with the Salvation Solution. So this added so much dry time and paint time to this project. And it's basically the reason that I wasn't able to get the little chest finished. Once the Salvation Solution was completely dry, it was time to try to paint it again. So here I am going over it with another coat of Crinoline, and thankfully the Salvation Solution worked. You can see how very orange this end is from all of the bleed through, and once I put that Salvation Solution on, I didn't have a single speck of bleed through after that. Now, this did take me a good 2.5 coats of the Crinoline to cover, and I was very careful to not paint the leather straps or the handle on the front. I wanted to leave those both brown, so I'm just going over this entire thing very carefully with that Crinoline paint. can see here what a huge difference just the second coat of crinoline made over the first. By the time I went over it with the third, I really was just covering a few shadows here and there. My plan is to use some decoupage paper on the top of this treasure chest. So I started by doing my best to measure across the top and then cut out the pieces that I needed. So I'm using the A3 fiber paper pack by Redesign with Prima. This one's called Whimsical Woodland, and it comes with 3 beautiful coordinating sheets of paper. So the first thing I did was steam out my wrinkles. They always come a little wrinkly, and it's best to use either steam or an iron to get those out. And then I am cutting the pieces of that decoupage paper that I want for the little inlets or the little places that I want to put them between those leather straps. Once I had my pieces cut out, it was time to decoupage them on. And for my medium, I'm using DIY's clear liquid patina. And I'm just putting a good even coat of that liquid patina over the first little indent. And then I am laying my paper over it, smoothing it out, and then going over it with a second coat of the liquid patina. Now, these fibrous papers tend to be a little bit more like fabric than paper. So I like to use a pretty liberal coat of the liquid patina, both below and on top of the decoupage paper, just to make sure that it adheres really well. Now for this second piece, since it is a little wider, I'm just starting by laying out some of the liquid patina and then just placing the bottom portion down where I want it and smoothing that out. And then I'm peeling back the paper to where I had that liquid patina laid down and adding more liquid patina, just kind of working my way across the top of this box. Now, once I finished with the top of this, I realized that the front needed a little something too. So I did end up cutting out some smaller pieces of this paper and adhering those to the front little squares also. So here's what the chest looks like with all of the decoupage paper. Once I was finished with that, I really liked the way that the brown straps kind of contrasted with all of that crinoline paint, but I also decided that it needed a little something more. It needed something to tie that brown into the rest of the piece. So I started by using a damp shop towel to wipe back some of the paint on the rivets and do a little bit of distressing. And I quickly realized that this was going to be a very long and tedious process. So I grabbed out my little bitty screwdriver and began just slowly going over each one of those rivets and wiping or just scraping all of the paint and the salvation solution back off of each one. Now, I realize at this point, I am not going to be able to sell this little chest for enough to make up for the amount of time that I'm having to put into it. However, I have to remind myself that I am here at my shop regardless of what I'm doing. I can either be doing something productive or I could be sitting watching YouTube videos. And honestly, sometimes I can do both, like in this case. So it really is okay that this little chest took me so much time. I don't really mind. And I also think that some of what I do is salvaging things from the landfill. And this little chest was definitely on its way there with that dilapidated bottom. There was just no way anybody was going to want it. So I invested invested my time, and I know, like I said, I won't make all of that back, but I'm still happy to have done it and salvaged this little chest. Now the final step is going to be sealing my crinoline paint, but before I did that, I went ahead and put my box back together again. So I'm just reattaching those hinges, reattaching the little hinge inside, and then putting the latch back on the front. For my sealer, I am going with my favorite, which is DIY's Clear Wax. And even though Dark and Decrepit is a sealer on its own, I decided to go ahead and give the inside of this box a coat of clear wax as well. I love the smooth and soft feel that wax gives as a finish, and especially over wood. I think it just helps make it feel more soft to the touch. And with the bottom having been a little bit rough, I figured this might be a good way to soften that out. So I just applied a coat of that clear wax and then wiped back the excess with my dry shop towel and then moved on to the rest of the box. I do go over my decoupage paper as well. With these fibrous papers, I feel like it really helps make them feel a lot more smooth and also helps lay down any of the little fibers that might be sticking up from the paper. So I just rub that wax down over my piece really well and then go back over it gently with a dry shop towel to wipe back the excess wax. Now, it's definitely a lot of work to get to this point, but I am so happy with how this little chest came out. I absolutely love it, and I hope you guys do too. That's it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little Christmas themed projects, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would really love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit that little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's projects. Just a quick reminder too, any of the paint and products you saw me use today can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry the full line of DIY paint and products, as well as Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, Recycled Treasures decoupage papers, and some Redesign with Prima, including those beautiful decoupage papers. So go check those out on my website. Anyway, let's see, Wednesday's video, I am probably going to be still working in my kitchen. My husband and I are officially trying to get moved out of our house, so I think that's what we will be doing tomorrow rather than a junk run. So again, I will more than likely have some thrift flips for you guys, maybe even some Christmas ornaments. We'll see what happens for Wednesday's video. I hope you'll join me back here then. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend and beginning of the week. And thank you so much for being here, you guys. I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.